Hi, everybody. I'm Daniel Isanuk. I'm the CFO for Newman Company, which is a vertically integrated organization. It's a paper mill, recycling plant, and a freight division as well. We attend roughly 16 events or participate in 16 events throughout the year, which includes sponsoring 4 events and actively exhibiting in 4 events, as well as speaking at a couple of events as well. I'd like to introduce the other speakers. Aparna.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Aparna Ramesh. I'm CFO at Farmer Mac, Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation. I've been in the industry as a CFO for over 25 years, predominantly in financial services. Really excited to be here and nice to see you all, and thank you, Danielle.
Thanks. And now I'll introduce Matt Jacobson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Jacobson. Spent the last 20 plus years in the tech industry, most recently 10 years with a venture-backed startup, and I'm about to join another venture-backed growth company. We typically do about 4 to 6 events a year, and our focus is always on how do we generate the most ROI for our spend, because we've got limited choices and limited resources. So it's great to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, guys. So I wanted to start off this session with trying to clear up some misnomers and to get an understanding of where your, as the audience, thoughts are regarding CFOs. So I'm gonna queue up all of you to go into the app. We're going to do a word cloud. So I want you all to please put in the one word that comes to mind when you think of a CFO. Maybe not your CFOs, but your customers' CFOs. Hopefully good things, but we'll see. The objective of this meeting, as we've stated, is really to give you all an understanding of what our thought process is as we decide how we participate in events, when to participate in events, and at what level we're going to participate in events. So we really want to, hopefully give you a look under the hood of that decision-making process. So with that said, I will kick it off. The first question to Aparna. One thing that we wanted to clear up was how that decision process works. So we have our CFOs, we have a CMO, we have a CRO. Talk to me a little bit about how you interact with those individuals in your organization or the relative positions.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a really important question. One of the, I think, misnomers also about CFOs is they don't think of CFOs as CFOs, but CFNOs, right? So I've tried. So I try very hard not to be a CFNO. What I do think is really important in the decision-making process, and when we think about events and what's the ROI, I think ROI is key, and ROI has to be really tied to the company's strategic outcomes. So I always try to point my colleagues back to our multi-year strategic plan and how attending a specific event or sponsoring an event or sending your people to that is going to not just be beneficial in the moment, but how it's actually going to align with, in a very tangible way, in achieving our strategic outcomes. Are we going to be able to meet additional investors or customers who will become part of our roster? So really tying the why back to strategy in all of these different types of I would say spend decisions is extremely important to me, and that's really how I try to sort of steer it. So it's never a binary answer.
Yeah, no, fair enough on that. Yeah, I mean, I think the CMO role and working with the CMO, while they have their budget allocation and what they want to do, they're going to try and stretch that. They're going to come in and say they want to do more with that what they had last year, and it's our job to sort of rein that in, to understand where we're going to invest that money, and how we're forecasting and budgeting using the funds that are available within our organizations. Yeah. So with that said, next question, Matt, to you. When you're deciding on an event and participating in it, what sort of factors go into that? How do you really make that decision?
Yeah, so as Aparna said, it really comes down to how do you measure ROI, or you really can't really measure ROI until after the event, so how do you estimate the ROI that you're going to generate from the event? For the companies I've worked for, it's always about new revenue, new leads, and those can either come from existing customers, new customers, or partnership opportunities. And so when we look at the events that we're evaluating attending, it's who's going to be there? Which of our current customers are going to be at that event? Which of our prospective customers might be at that event? Which of our partners are at that event? And some of our partners actually sponsor events of their own that we will attend. But then it's who's going to be there from our prospects or from our targets. And is it C-level execs? Is it more of a networking event? Is it more of a get business done type of event where we're getting guaranteed meetings? So I think a little bit of that is based on the structure of the event, and then it comes down to how much are we going to invest. And it's not just investing dollars, it comes down to people and time. Who are we sending to the event? Are we going to make a concerted effort and have our C-level execs at this event so that we can actually facilitate high-level strategic meetings, or are we there just to fill our CRM pipeline, in which case we send a lot of salespeople? So I think it really depends on the type of event, but at the end of the day, we want to know after the event, did we get what we expected out of the event? Did we learn something? Did we get new partners? Did we get new leads and qualified leads? And how many of them did we close?
Thank you. So I can see the results of our word cloud here as it's come in. Money being the primary thought, which is fair, but some other interesting ones that I won't take too personally, like stuffy. That's really standing out to me. I don't think that necessarily speaks to me, but I appreciate
no
that.
Money.
Okay. Otherwise, some pretty strong words that make sense, and I think are frugal, restrictive. Sure, I could see that. No, okay, that really popped out there. Thank you guys for that. I want to go to.
Can I just? I like this word cloud. If we can put the word cloud back up for a sec. I think there's like a bit of a misnomer. Restrictive. There was the no's. We're not really the enemy. We just want to make sure that the every dollar is spent, or every dollar is spent wisely, right? With my CMO, when we're discussing events, I ask a lot of questions, and it's not that I'm trying to be negative about it. I'm trying to basically make sure that we're making the right choices, right? If we spend a dollar here, we can't spend that dollar over here. So we got to make sure that dollar that we're spending is being spent on the right things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Matt. And I want to segue that into when we're talking about spending dollars, making these decisions. Events are something that you commit to in advance. Yes, we're setting our budget ideally a year in advance, but there's a lot of commitment that has to happen. So I'm going to take it away from the word cloud now and ask you guys to go into your app, and I'm going to pose this question. And it's do you or have you relaxed your policies regarding cancellations, deposits for events this past year? And if so, do you plan to do it again next year? When we're budgeting for our year, this is a challenge to really be able to commit a deposit. When your cash flow is important to you, it's not an easy decision to make to be able to commit a 50% deposit to an event.
Yeah, I would say in the venture-backed or capital-constrained business, we're budgeting on a quarter-by-quarter basis versus an annual basis. So when we are asked to make annual commitments or commitments well in advance of a show, I'm always like, what's our out? What if we choose not to do the show, or we locked in and we don't have any flexibility? So when there is flexibility, it's always an easier decision.
Yeah.
But the industry obviously is not.
I get
is
it.
Not
I
being
do.
flexible.
I understand why we would want to have that sort of locked in. You guys have to budget and forecast as well, so I appreciate that. But obviously, it is part of the decision-making process. So I appreciate that 8% there that has relaxed a little bit. So I'll get to the next question. I mean, Matt, also back to you, if you don't mind. A little bit of what really what constitutes a successful event when you've said and done, you committed your dollars, you've attended. Now what are we looking at?
Yeah, for us, it's always come down to did we generate new sales, right? And new sales could be sales from existing customers, but also new relationships that we developed. So, it usually takes us 3, 6, sometimes 9 months post an event to really understand where did that lead originate from, and how many touch points did it have over the course of the business development sales cycle, and then, when it closed, how do we attribute it? And so, we track events. We track where the leads came from, and we track what shows that which events generated that lead, and we follow it through and say, all right, of the leads we generated, what percentage were we able to close from that show, and did it result in a good return for us?
Gotcha. Aparna, what in your industry? I mean, we all work in very different businesses, and I think these metrics can be very different for us. So I'm curious what you experience for yourself at a successful event.
Yeah, so I think for us, you're right. I mean, I think we're quite different, and I think that's what makes it hopefully interesting for you all as you listen to each of us as CFOs with a different sort of orientation in terms of how we can actually spend our money and assess ROI. We do a couple of different things. So one, the process of how we think about events or expenses or conferences is really decentralized. So we have sort of a macro level budgeting process, and we make some decisions, and I talked about a strategic plan. But after that, every department head, the CMO in particular, will have the lion's share of the sponsored events as well as anything that is enterprise-wide. And then you have individual heads, so call it the chief business officer, the CFO, the chief credit officer. They all have industry-specific events that they may send their people to. That is a trade-off that they individually have to make against lots of other things. It could be equipment, it could be hiring people, et cetera. So really try to decentralize a lot of that decision making. But when we pull back and we talk about attendance sort of at a company or at a macro level, and you ask the question specifically around success, so let me maybe highlight a couple of big events that are important to us in financial services. So when we think about, say, big structured finance conferences, we might send anywhere from 3 to 8 people to that. But the calculus there is, are we in a position to meet investors and have enough time peeled away from the conference? And I think the space matters too. So if you're trying to have a conversation with an investor, and as a company you're trying to pitch to investors, then you've got to have the ability to peel off and talk to investors privately. So as conference organizers, I think it's important to consider that there needs to be a little bit of maybe white space built into the schedule, but also flexibility in terms of just allowing those conversations to happen. So it's definitely an intangible, but the logistics of it are quite important to us, because we do go there with an eye towards meeting customers or meeting investors. Then there's the learning opportunity. So sending people from my team, I might send people not to go and pitch the company or meet new investors or customers, but I might send them to really gain perspective. And so the quality of the attendees matters a lot. So as you're thinking about who's attending these conferences, everybody wants to be in good company. So, don't have a bunch of C-level executives there with, folks that they aren't going to be able to exchange ideas or perspectives with. So managing sessions that do cater to people's time investment, I think, is extremely important. So people won't come back to an event if they went there and they found, I'm being hit with just a lot of vendors, right? And I think it's actually important to have a balance. I mean, when I go to these structured finance events, I do want to meet with certain vendors, but I don't want to be left with, the next year I'm going to have vendors call me or email me or spam me constantly. We were actually just talking about that as we were getting ready, for this dialogue. But there's got to be a healthy mix. So those are all the intangible, I would say, success criteria that really come out of our calculus to send employees to events, and especially the big ones that are sort of done at an industry scale.
Yeah. I mean, to second that, really, in my industry, recycling and paper manufacturing and freight, there's a lot of different events that have to be attended there, and a big walk away that we always want to get is to understand what's going on in the market, to understand what's going on in the industry. A lot of the events that we participate in have rolled into it sort of an industry enrollment. So you're part of an association by a factor of that event. So it really adds to the not just the attendance, but also just the participation in that event. And those are important factors when we're determining to participate in an event. So furthering the questions here, I think a lot of this event that Sam has put on is really about change in events, and I think what I'd like you guys to focus on, Aparna, what, in your opinion, are the other little things that happened at events? I mean, you just went into it a lot, but is there more with technology within locations that help support you and your company when you are participating in an event?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is a little bit. It does depend, and again, I'll just use the examples that I've used. I think about big finance conferences. They tend to be in certain hubs, whether it's Vegas or Miami. I mean, certainly that's great, but that's the location to me personally and to us as a company is a little less important. What's more important is it easy to access that location? Time is really important. So what's the connectivity in terms of flights or, getting the critical mass of people, in and out, quite easily? How's the airport? Those things, kind of the ecosystem around the event matters a lot. I think it's also important in terms of, are you hosting the event at a time when there are a bunch of other events? When we do our all hands, and this is an event that we sponsor, a consideration that we've learned the hard way is, well, avoid hosting it in October when you've got big conferences, say for the IMF or the World Bank, because hotel rates are really expensive. So I think those are obvious things, and all of you are really seasoned, and you're probably thinking through all of these dynamics. But there's nothing more frustrating than having 2 or 3 different events happening at the same time that you want to go to something that's really important. So that does really play into the calculus. I talked about vendors or touched upon that. Making sure that the quality of the vendors are paired up with the quality of the attendees, I think, is also quite important. And then I think there's got to be a little bit of a feedback mechanism. So if you are collecting survey data after attendees attend an event, can you play that back? How are you actually digesting that survey data and changing or tweaking and communicating those changes and tweaks, to folks? And the only other point that I'd make is, obviously the industry, the reason you have us all up here is because you're trying to hear from us as CFOs in terms of where we want to, trade off that precious dollar. I would just suggest that, companies more and more seem to be taking on events themselves. For one reason or another, maybe it's more topical, it can be more customized. Can you all think about ways in which you've done this seamlessly? You probably have it down more than an in-house operation does. Can you diversify your offerings so that you can actually offer some of those services to companies that might be looking to sponsor their own events? So those are things that I think a lot of companies really struggle with, especially the small to mid-sized ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think from our perspective, right, it's when we think about shows, and it's how easy is it to meet people, right? Technology's come a long way, right, with social networking, with networking within conference apps. Those are really convenient, so people can set up their meetings beforehand, know who's going to be at the show, request meetings, meet people of interest. I think AI coming up and another layer of hey, it'd be great for you to meet these people, you have common interests, will go a long way as well into making shows more productive for people.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I haven't gotten to appreciate what's going on out there in terms of the technology, but I know speaking to my event participants that we send out, they've really appreciated the technology feature. And I appreciate hearing that they're coming back and saying, I was able to get all these meetings in a shorter time. Now, maybe that means less people, less days, but it does mean that we're more likely to participate in that event and perhaps participate at a higher level because we're able to more efficiently navigate that event. It's been remarkable what happened with technology and how that's being used in the space. So I strongly urge everyone to try and optimize that as much as possible for your attendees. And to that point as well, it is really about efficiencies. So while we want everybody to be able to attend events and be able to attend all of the events, really, it's really where that time is best spent. What is the most convenient for your company? Where are your customers? And for us making the decisions, making sure that it's easy for us to make that. I mean, once again, relaxing the policies. I won't go too hard on that, but it's also being able to make it easy to understand what we're getting out of it. Another thing that we've seen in our events is getting that media marketing placement that happens sometimes. Whether that's just within the event space, like you see on your booklets here, but perhaps something more. Something that's more on social media and understanding what you're going to get out of that if you are going to a sponsorship level. And those are some of the factors there. I don't know. Yeah. So with that said, I'd like to open the forum up for a Q&A session. Hopefully you guys have some questions ready. Obviously, feel free to raise your hand. Microphone will come around. You can also enter the questions in, now I'm forgetting what the app is called.
Chime Live app. That's great, yes.
Great.
The Chime Live app. You can enter the questions there. Also, we have a couple of mic people here. So you can just raise your hand. I will start off with the first question. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for coming and sharing your point of view. We appreciate it. Daniel, I'll pick on you because you're part of 1/3 of what you do is recycling.
That's right.
Okay. We didn't hear from any of you anything about sustainability, anything about when you look at events. You talked about accessibility, how easy it is to get to. Within your companies, is there any discussion about going to events, whether it's positive or negative from a sustainability point of view? Start with you, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that that's a big factor, but we are attending sustainability events in a lot of cases. I mean, that's a big part of what we're doing is understanding what's going on in the recycling industry, particularly papers and plastics. But when we're talking about it, I think that it's not part of the conversation as much as I would like it to be. I think that that's something that if we knew more about that going into an event, it might be an extra selling point. But I mean, I'm answering honestly, it is not as big of a part. I mean, our company is very big on sustainability, but it is not necessarily part of our decision-making process when we're going to attend or participate in an event.
And the reason I picked on Daniel is because he's related to me, so. You probably figured that was going to come, right?
Yeah, okay. I'm ready. So
let's hear from you two as well, please.
Sure. We are a publicly traded company. And so if you're following the publicly traded company space, and I think this is actually quite relevant as you all think about sustainability and Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, because those are emissions that are generated by the company themselves through their footprint. But I think what's interesting with traveling to events and why I think accessibility is linked to sustainability is, the more people you send, the more pressure you're putting on the infrastructure, whether you're driving to an event, whether you're flying, et cetera. I think that there is some thinking that goes behind that. We aren't at the point now where we're, like you, correlating sort of, hey, we should reduce the number of people who go to events with sustainability necessarily, but it is generally part of the equation in terms of thinking about being very responsible in how we sort of act as stewards of both the environment, the footprint, the consumption, and ultimately the dollars. So I think that's definitely a factor, but I would suggest that this could become a bigger factor, especially for larger companies as they consider what their footprint is, and if they're publicly traded, some of these numbers will start to make their way into metrics. So do think about that, because and offering virtual options, I think, will go a long way in terms of this particular issue around sustainability.
I've got a quick question for you. I'm Sheriff Caramont with PCMA. I do think it's a shame that you all are not thinking of sustainability. I think that trends, what we talk about trends are mostly fads, but trends really transform our industry. And climate change can completely shut down many of our industries. So the fact that you're not thinking about it, it's a shame, and you should be. But the question is coming.
That's fair.
No, I do want to say that we are. I want to say that we are thinking about it, but we're not. But we're being. So just to answer that question, we are very consciously thinking about it, but we're not. Our footprint isn't influenced so much, by that additional person who's going to an event, and it becomes an ROI trade-off against sustainability. That's what I'm trying to say.
So my question is, sustainability is one part, but inclusivity or what a destination or your vendors are doing with respect to inclusivity in their organization. So how are the three of you looking at sustainability, inclusivity, including not just race, but people with special abilities? How are you all looking at that in your agreements to select a destination going forward?
Okay, they're not selecting destinations, but when it comes to which events you decide to go to, we know that Matt, you mentioned that you need to know who's going, and that's from a financial point of view. Is there any discussion on whether you go to an event based on who might be presenting and the diversity of the presenters, that type of stuff?
I think one of the things we look at is we also try and send different people we don't want to send the same people to every event, right? So we want to make sure we send a cross-selection of people that represent our company. So when we think about going, it's, all right, do we think about the mix of males and females? Do we think about the mix of experienced people and inexperienced people? Do we think about the mix of, marketing? Maybe we send some product people or engineering people, depending on the show and exec. So I think we think about it that way. And in terms of inclusivity, when we as a company, right, have people who, from a small company perspective, having a company event's always difficult when you've got people who have various different, I'll pick on food, for example, right? You've got your vegans, you've got your gluten-frees, and so when we send people to events, we want to make sure that they can accommodate the needs of our people so that our people are comfortable at going to a show as well.
Okay, now we have a question.
Yeah, we have a question from Chime Life. I heard you say CFOs are not the no people, but it sometimes seems like that from other leaders and directors. What are you doing to push and lead other leaders to be solution providers instead?
Would you like me to? Yeah. So I think the way we operate our decision making is, I talked about decentralization of decision making. I actually think a CFO's job is not to say yes or no or to make decisions. The CFO is one of the executives in the company, and their role is to be stewards of the company's balance sheet and financials. Their job is not to make decisions. They should be making decisions in conjunction with the rest of the executive team, the CEO, and the board in execution. And then the tactics become very decentralized. That's really the mechanism by which we do this. And once we've agreed that given our strategy, given the direction we want to head, we think, let's just say events are a really important component of being able to get us the ROI we need to ultimately fulfill our strategy, then we'll allocate a certain budget to it. I don't allow my team to start nickeling and diming people around that budget once that budget's been established. But I think what's important is to say, just like you would with anything, whether it's a hire or a piece of equipment, did we get what we intended to get out of it, and did it actually move the needle in advancing us? So I think it creates a little bit of an accountability mechanism. But if a CFO, and this is where the solution-orientedness comes into play, because if a CFO comes in and just, and I was looking at the word cloud, is just sort of saying no for the sake of saying no, or trying to meet a target, no matter how, and just going through line items without really considering which line item is important, and within that, which sub-event is more important than another, then I don't think the ultimate strategy is going to be achieved. So I think the role of the CFO is to be that facilitator and to be that partner to the CEO and to the board in enabling and bringing along their colleagues and their teams and their colleagues' teams, frankly, in achieving those objectives. But I by no means think of myself as having the authority to say yes or no. So I always find it very interesting when I hear, gosh, you're a CFO and you probably have your hand on the budget. I actually don't want to have my hand on the budget. If this is done right, then it's going to work out. And frankly, it has worked out for us in our company.
Yeah, I want to just add to that. We have stakeholders, right? Each of us and the board and our investors, and we've made commitments to them in terms of revenue growth and profitability that we're trying to meet. And if things are going well, we have more dollars to allocate to different things, and some of it might go to events, and some of it might go to marketing efforts, and some of it might go to new products or capital expenditures. When things aren't going well, we may have to pull back from certain areas, and there's only certain areas that we can pull back from or have ability to control pulling back from in a short period of time. And sometimes that's events, sometimes that's travel. And so we're making adjustments on the fly based on our overall objectives and meeting our overall objectives for the year, and partnering with our colleagues to help make those adjustments as opposed to making those decisions for them.
Over here. Hi, right? Okay. Hi, Lisa from Las Vegas. Thank you for being here today. We have nicknames for our CFO, which we will not disclose here. We appreciate what you do. On the sales side, a comment and a question. The comment is, a lot of CFOs have, like you said, Matt, a very black and white way of measuring ROI. Did X event equal, a new sale or whatever? And I would say that most of us in the room would say that that is a very difficult thing to tag the sales relationship to one event. There's many of our Las Vegas customers in the room, thank you very much, and we see them 8, 10, 12 times a year, and that is very, very important to us. So to tag, the spend of an event to one time is really, really difficult. That's my comment. The question is, why does the CFO never include in the ROI ratio retention? Never, never, never is there a retention. It was new, and you said it, Matt, you at least gave credit to new business from an existing customer, but I think you all really need to add into the equation retention, because there is just as much to be lost when we don't attend an event. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I could speak to that. I know personally, my company that I work for has been around for 105 years, and it's built its different arms, including the recycling facility, over the last 50 years. And part of it is retention. I think that's a huge factor. We don't really look at ROI. There's other aspects where we're looking at ROI, but it's really about sustaining those relationships with vendors and customers. A lot of it is procurement for us, so it's going out and making sure that we're finding the right garbage pile that we're getting our garbage from, to feed the mill, and be able to sell that product. So it is about maintaining those connections, and it's a chance. It's instead of having to travel around and go to visit this factory, that that recycling plant there, we're able to do that in one location. I think that is a really valuable aspect of, at least for my industry, that's a huge part of what we look for. So I appreciate that, and we didn't mention that, but that is definitely an important piece of event participation.
Can I add one point on the retention? I think you've got to think of ROI as a very numerical metric, but I think what we do look at retention. It's very explicit in our strategic plan. It comes under our KPIs. So one of our key performance indicators, does have to do with retention, and sending, our teams to conferences and events is very much part of that intangible benefit in terms of learning and perspective and career growth that they do get. So absolutely, I think it's very important, it's very beneficial, and that does come intangibly into the calculus.
Yeah, I think the hard part is is attributing retention to an event, because we have multiple touch points with our existing customers throughout the year, right? We do QBRs, we see them at events. Our customer service team is dealing with them on a daily basis. But if we started to hear that we lost customers because we weren't at an event, then it probably definitely become a factor in the measurement.
So the more events you go to, the greener you are, because you're meeting multiple people at one time in one place.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being so
I'll take that win.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm struggling a little bit with the idea of accountability and reporting, and I'm just wondering if there needs to be a more holistic grade card regarding the return on experience, ROI, whatever we want to phrase it, for the industry, because I think there's a limited perspective, as we've talked about, relative to the value proposition of events. So I would just throw that out to the group for comment.
I mean, yeah, I think that there would be a lot of value in that. I mean, easy to calculate ROI. We've got a new customer, and we can talk about sustaining and retention of customers too, and vendors, and having opportunities to find new technology that's going to support your business, and understanding industry knowledge. But it is all tough to calculate. It's tough to really put that together. I would challenge you guys to try and come up with a metric that really puts that together. It's not easy. It's not easy for us to make that decision based on these intangibles and these hard numbers. Obviously, the hard numbers speak better to our investors, to our owners. So it's a little easier to sell those. So that is why those are top of mind. But there is intangibles, and there is a value to that. So it's hard to put that there.
I guess now with using data, the ability to sort of correlate and use data very well. If there is an event and it is promoted, and the use of social media can really help us create that accountability and that reporting, because it's how many people were interested. Say you put that out on LinkedIn and you say X number of people attended. How many people have left impressions on LinkedIn? I mean, so there's ways in which you can promote the event, you can promote the people who are at the event, collect all the data in terms of likes, maybe, right, using what's done with LinkedIn, and then feed that back into the accountability and the reporting process. I mean, there's probably very creative ways in which you can do this using a lot of qualitative and quantitative data, and I think it would be a very interesting exercise to do that. And then, as I said in my earlier comments, play that back, right, to the folks who are your customers, because they need to understand that, and that then becomes a mechanism for, say, the CMO to talk to the CFO and say, it's not just about the quantitative ROI. Look at, here's what we got. But if it's sort of you manage what you measure. So we have to start measuring that.
Yeah. I think one more point, though, is to understand your customers, right? I'm a very different potential target customer than Daniel is, or than Aparna is, or our companies are for your conferences, based on the stage of our business, the way we're funded and capitalized. So, you're going to talk to my CMO and you're going to talk to me in a different way than you're going to talk to Daniel's company or Aparna's company, because things are going to resonate differently, right? When we're young and growing and capital constrained, we have a singular focus on growth, right? That's our sustainability. So, just understanding that difference would be helpful.
Okay, we have time just for a few more questions.
Thank you for providing your perspective as CFOs and your focus on measurements and accountability, because as CFOs, you rely upon independently audited financial statements that you provide. Why don't you require the same for events and trade shows, the way marketing people otherwise require them for publications and web hits and things like that?
So would that be something that's presented to us?
It's something that you could ask the people that are participating in events, is it independently audited? Because let's be honest, in this room, sometimes it's not.
You need to explain that.
I'm sorry, I need to explain that every event organizer, and we will see it today, and we have, they'll say how many people attended and from what countries and all that, but they're just saying it.
Yeah.
Unless it's independently audited, it's like trust but verify. And there's two different types of events in the world. In fact, UFI is here, and you must, to be a member of UFI, you must independently audit your event. And I would encourage everyone in this room that produces an event to look at that, because it's a great thing to do for the industry to promote honesty in selling your event. And if anyone should require it, I would just say, why not CFOs?
So here we have a classic push-pull. Gary's been pushing this, in my opinion, correctly so for many, many, many years, and he wants you all to pull it through. He wants you to go to the organizations and the organizers and say, we're not going to come unless you give us audited events.
So Gary, you want us to be even more unpopular?
Yes. Thanks, Aparna.
This is the magic of live events. Who would have thought that 3 CFOs would cause such amazing amount of interest, laughter, and curiosity? Yes, please.
Hi. Quick question related to the ROI that you guys are talking to. Typically, when I think of ROI, I measure it against like ROAS and other ad spend and things that you can attribute to. Is there an ROI benchmark that you guys look to and say, this is the number that I expect from an ROI perspective for an event?
So I actually don't look at it just in an event basis, right? There's many ways we can generate sales leads or we can generate new business, right? We can go spend money on Google, right? Or I could spend money LinkedIn advertising. I could put a banner ad somewhere, right? So we're looking in a company like that I've worked at. We don't sort of say, well, we've got this many dollars for shows and this many dollars for lead gen through advertising. We look at it holistically across and say, what's going to generate the most, what's going to generate the most return for us? And it's obviously a mix, and we're experimenting and looking at it, but it's not, one show versus the next show. It's it's shows versus everything else we can do as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we go to, say, a structured finance conference that's held in Vegas, we know underwriters are going to be there. We know bankers are going to be there. So everybody in the transaction supply chain is invited and is there. And then for certain companies, you have issuers and you have investors. So they are there as well. And then you have these spaces where issuers and investors can have one-on-one discussions. So when we come away from that, we think of the ROI, say, of that particular event as, okay, how many attendees were there? Who were they? Who attended from our team? What did they get from it in terms of the agenda topics? How were they able to apply that, back to their day job and the things that we have to influence in terms of decision making? How many investors did we meet? Now that's a very, very tangible metric, very easy to audit because you've got the, you've sort of got the lineup there. And how many of those investors ended up actually buying into the transaction because we as a primary issuer might meet with them? So we actually track a lot of those metrics in those types of conferences that satisfy a whole host of needs, from lead generation to content consumption, that can actually help you as you're sort of navigating your own strategic execution. So there are some intangibles at play here. So and I think CFOs are at the center of it. We're not just looking at it as binary yes or no, like did this meet our return threshold? It's really hard to do that in something like this, but I hope that helps.
I would like to thank the three of you very much for giving us a whole new appreciation for CFO. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.